Oh, hello everybody. I do believe we're live. And you can't see me yet. There we go. It's Friday. It's 5 o'clock. At least it is in the UK. I appreciate it's probably a different time where you are. But that means it's time for another Friday painting session. So the challenge that we have today, if you choose to accept it, is to paint this silver teapot, which is, to be fair, large and complicated in the minimum amount of brush strokes. Okay, so there is a serious side to this challenge. It's not just for the sake of making something difficult. It's so that you can get an idea of, I hope anyway, even if you're not painting along, even if you're just watching, how important simplification is, especially when you're faced with a very difficult challenge. When you look at something like this and you say to yourself, there's no way, that just looks too hard. Not only that, to try and do it in an hour, give or take, we might run over a little bit today. It's not going to be easy. So the only way to approach it is to simplify it drastically, extreme simplification. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to use a really limited palette, mostly because, sorry, I'm just checking the comments and setting up the last bit of the stream. I'm going to use a very limited palette because there are very few colors in there, but they are, you could say, quite varied. But it's all really, really low chroma. It's all basically a bunch of grays, a bunch of different colored grays. And that's all we have to play with today. So you could paint this entire thing just with raw umber, ivory black, and white. If you want to add a little bit more variation to the grays, you can add something else, you know. So I haven't yet, but I'm going to put on my palette transparent red oxide in green gold, which will allow me to vary it a little bit if I feel like doing it. But for the moment, let me show you the wonderful ChromaMagic app with this photo. So I took the shot of this teapot earlier on today, and you can see, like, I've got a grid up at the moment. This is one of the really nice things about the ChromaMagic app, is you can have no grid, or you can have a really simple one, which is cool. You know, I'm quite a fan of a small grid like that. Or you can have a bit more, 3 or 4, you know, it's just one of the little options that you've got with it, which is really, really nice. If I click around here, let's click around in the background. Obviously, there's a lot of variation. Am I going to paint all those folds? Absolutely not. I'm going to look for a general value. So I have the sample size set pretty high. And I'm going to decide on a general value. I'm going to say like a value 6 or a value 7, because somewhere is 8, somewhere is 7, somewhere. I mean, some of it is quite a bit darker than that, but we need to generalize, right? So generally we'll go about a value 7 in the background. Down here on the cloth, we're going to be like a value 8 on the right hand side, and we've got the cast shadow, which is going to be down about a value 3. But notice the chroma here, all these colors really close to gray. Not a lot of variation. What about the thing itself? Well, the interesting thing about silver is that it doesn't have really much color of its own when it's very reflective. And I polished this just before I took the photo of it. So look, we've got pretty much the same colors. Generally, the reflections will be slightly lower value than what they are reflecting. But you know, if I click around, everything is still really close to gray, right? You can see, like, at the colors on the right hand side, you can see the actual hue of the grays is changing, but that could also be just an aberration of the photograph, right? But we've got from right down the bottom of the value range, really, really dark, basically black, right? Up to the very highest value that we can hit in paint, which is up here in the highlight. So I've shot this photograph slightly underexposed so that the highlight here is very much the lightest thing, because that's how I would paint it, right? So we got a big shape here. That's very, very dark, this big shape. So we're just going to do this big shape here, and we're going to do it like a value 1. This big shape here has quite a bit of variation in it. Over here it's a value 7. Over there it's like quite a bit darker, a value 4. So we'll go for something like about a value 5. Maybe we'll do this in 2 parts, a shadow side and a light side. So here's a good example of what I mean by simplification. This spout, as beautiful as it is, has countless variations of color along it. We're going to simplify it right down, basically 2. So this color, we're going to say that's like about a value 7. Down here, about the same, a value 7. Then we're going to put a darker stripe at about a value 4 in the middle. The shadow side, we're going to do like a value 3. Do you see what I mean? So if you squint right down, you can almost reduce this whole thing down to about 3 or 4 values. And that is the key. So it's no good just going in and trying to start painting without thinking about what you're doing if you're approaching something like a bit of a challenge like this. The process of painting it begins before you've even picked up a brush, before you've even put any paint on your palette, by looking at either the subject, if you're working from life, or the reference photo if you're working from a photo. So what have I got out so far? I have got lead white, raw umber and ivory black. I'm also going to put out a little bit of green gold. Now a tiny touch of this will send some of the greys that I mix. So I'm going to put out a tiny bit. I don't add too much chroma. I don't want the colour to become too intense. It will send it a little bit yellow. Transparent red oxide will send it a little bit towards orange. If I want it to be somewhere in between the two, just mix between them. But the pace today is going to be slow and steady to start off with. Because we've got a pretty complicated challenge here, and we need to simplify it. We need to decide quite carefully what those areas are that we're going to simplify it down to, right? Let's start by oiling out the panel. This is not going to be speed painting today, because this is people who are on the Mastering the Magic workshop on Wednesday, when we had the live session. I was evil to everybody and I made you paint really fast, didn't I? But I did it deliberately so that no one would have time to work on any details. We were painting a little copper pot. And you know what? Everybody's been posting their paintings in the community, and they're all really good. They're all really good. It's all about picking the right areas, hitting the values that you want. So this is just linseed oil, a little bit of solvent. I've got a little bit of Gamsol in my linseed oil, just a tiny bit, a few drops. And I'm oiling out the panel, help the paint flow, and then I'm wiping it all back, right? Well, put it this way, Sandra, it's going to start slow. Because I can't afford to put down a lot of strokes that are wrong. Okay, with this way of painting that we're going to do today. So I'm going to start pretty slowly, but then what will happen, if it works, if I manage to manage the challenge, is that it will all come together quite quickly at the end. Now we're fast and furious today, until we get to the end. So I want to give you a chance to be able to get all of these things right. Don't forget, when we were in the workshop session, you already had the shapes broken down. You had the reference photo well in advance. I'd already shown you what shapes we were going to break the pot down to, the larger areas, and we had the colours mixed too. So then you can just paint, right? Today we've got to think all of that process through a little bit more. So let's mix up a bit of raw umber and a bit of white. This is just for drawing out. So I'm going to be fairly careful with the drawing out today. I'm going to show you the shapes that I want. That I'm going to generalize this teapot down into. And in order to be able to do that, I need to do it reasonably slow, because if I try and do it like quickly, like I normally draw things out, I don't think it's going to be neat enough. Let's get a nice little filbert hog bristle. This is a size 0, teeny tiny brush. And this is how I hold it when I'm drawing out, like at the back, and I waggle it like this to make the marks, right? So to make the drawing out easier, and kind of visualize the grid, where the grid would be, or at least divide it into 4. Where's the top of the teapot? Well, actually, let's draw the big general shapes of the teapot first. So, well, the bottom of it anyway is it crosses this line about halfway down between here and the bottom. So that's going to be about the bottom. See the waggle? We do the waggle to make the lines. The very top of it is about here-ish. So now I want to decide where the center line of it is, and it's actually just to the left. I almost never put things right in the middle of the panel, because it just kind of, I suppose there's nothing really wrong with it. I guess things look really stable if they're right in the middle. So that's furthest left point, that's the furthest right. So I'm going to decide on the middle point, halfway between the two. You know, you can measure to make sure you get it right. I'm going to be about here, about there, say. That's the center point. Now this is important to have the kind of, as a construction line, the center of the teapot, because it's going to help us get everything else in the right place. I usually, by the way, I get some paint on the brush when I'm drawing out. I have quite a small amount of paint. I wipe it off like that. So this is one of the kind of defining construction lines, constructions of the pot, if you like. Just going to decide. So this is why your center line is useful, right? That was obviously really out. I'm going to draw the base just as kind of a single shape, because it means that I can check, say I'm putting the left side of my base out here, about there. Then I can measure that distance to the center and make sure on the other side that it's symmetrical. I'm thinking this is probably a bit high. We'll bring that down a little bit. I said I wasn't going to be sketchy, but it's funny how you fall back into your own habits, isn't it? And I'm immediately kind of not doing as small and careful lines as I promised myself I was going to do. Straight in with the big lines. Not to worry, it'll be fine. Just going to use a couple of lines to decide on that shape of the bottom of the teapot. Again, I'm thinking about symmetry, so I want to make sure like that this point is the same distance from the center as this point. This point is the same distance from the center as this point. Helps avoid so many drawing problems when you're painting stuff like this. Now the very top part of the teapot, it is an ellipse, but I'm not bothered too much about that. I can sort that out as I paint. That's about that, where the lid of the teapot joins the main body of it. Come out about that far. About there on the other side, I think. Maybe a little bit further out than that. So it's only just a little way in from this, probably about there. From this point here, a little way in where the top is. I mean, absolutely, you can try and eyeball something like this, but, you know, good luck. There's nothing unartistic about using some construction lines to figure out where stuff goes. And using this method, even if some of your widths or whatever are wrong, slightly out, it will still look all right in the painting because it will be symmetrical. Hello, it's good to see you. Don't bother apologising for being late. It's fine. It's just a Friday session. It's just a bit of fun. Well, it's not just a bit of fun, but I hope that it is fun as well as being instructive, and hopefully will each time will give you something new to take away, you know. Probably something like right. Notice each time I decide where something's going, I'm doing the corresponding mark on the other side. This is for this little kind of bit that sticks out the top, if you like. And everything is constructed as a series of straight lines. Handles and spouts, very tricky business. So this is how I've decided about a handle. Like, that's the highest point of the handle, pretty much. It joins about here, and the furthest left it goes out to is about there. So I know that I want it to be something like this. From here it goes almost straight down to where it joins the teapot. You know, just construct these things out of a series of straight lines and you'll be much, much closer than if you try and just eyeball like difficult curves like that. Every curve can be broken down so that it's made of a series of straight lines. You just want it to be in the right place. The spout comes out to about here. Crosses down here, leaves the bottom of the pot about there. It's not quite vertical yet here, it's still kind of slightly slanted that way, thin at the top here. And it leaves right at this point where this line joins the edge, that's where it leaves here. And you can see one side of the plane there. I think we're not too far out, right? Not bothered about perfection as long as it's fairly workable. So, shapes. The first thing that I see when I look at this, I mean, I've deliberately shot it with a neutral background of a slightly higher value, is in the same way I want to figure out where these big shapes are. So I'm looking at this big dark shape now. You know, that's the one that hits my eye when I look at this pot. So this is all like big dark shape. This is all going to be like a value 1, right? But it doesn't follow the form of the pot there. I mean, here it kind of, it steps up. Kind of goes like this here. And then it goes right the way up. Really, if you squint down to the top of the pot, the right-hand side is highlight. I would say something like that. So all of this is like big dark shape. I'll scribble it in so you can kind of see what I mean by this big shape here. The top, would reduce that to two shapes, a dark one here and then another slightly less dark one over this side. This obviously, this little top bit here doesn't really matter, it's just completely dark. This, the back side of the spout, the plane that's facing away from us, all dark. The base, all dark on the left hand side and light on the right. That's all dark. So what I'm doing is I'm not trying to get the right value or anything. I'm filling them in so you can see the areas that I'm talking about. I'm going to do those really dark. You know, these are the dark shapes. I'm not worrying about whether this looks like a handle. I'm worrying about is the shape right? If the shape is right and I get the value right, then it will work. Let's decide on our cast shadow. It's going to come back here. It's a shape. Just like these are shapes, the cast shadow is a shape. You squint down, comes away from just below the bottom of the teapot here and goes over this way. Around here we have what I would call a middle value shape. This side here, this is all light. This is a middle value shape. There's another middle value shape here. So I'm looking for big middle value shapes. There's another one down here, there. And there's one in the middle of the spout. It doesn't follow exactly the form of the spout. It comes over here and then it goes up on the right hand side of the spout. Middle value shape. This is all a middle value shape as well. Probably enough to get started, right? And basically I've reduced it to 3 values. Now, before I do anything else, I want to fill in the background. Jacqueline says, it's fun indeed, but happy to just be watching today. You wore me out with that little copper pot. It was fast, wasn't it? It was fast. But we had all our shapes decided on and we had our colours ready mixed. You know, it was just down to how you put the paint down on the panel, you know. Matthew, you're most welcome. Midge says, where is the picture to download? Midge, you need to be... I mean, I put these streams out for free anyway, just as kind of demos. But for the reference photo, I post the reference photos on my community, which is part of my online school. So to get access to those, you need to be to be a part of my private community, basically, which is for people who learn with me, either bought a course or part of the online school. And you also get the materials list, and we have a critique session once a month. Over Zoom. It's fun. Let me, I'm just thinking what I should really do. Just give you a link. I'll pop a link in the chat to the school. This basically is where you can get the reference photos, be a part of the community. I also get access to a load of courses. So what did I say around here? Value 8 over here, a little bit darker over this side, value 7 for the background. Got my trusty value scale here. So let's start off with mixing. I'm going to need to get enough paint to kind of scrub in a good background color, just raw umber and white. I think about a value 7 would be good for the background. We can always change it a little bit if we want to. The main thing is, the goal that I've set myself is to, on the teapot itself at least, to paint the minimum amount of strokes to make it work as a teapot. That's good, that's about a value 7. And then over here, I think we wanted like a bit lighter, like a value 8. And then over this side, when we're not in the shadow, darker still, like a value 6. So let's mix up a few values. So there's a 7. I'm going to need some more white. I'll mix an 8. Just raw umber and black. Raw umber and white. I mean, you can literally do this entire painting just as a value study with raw umber and white. The nice thing about painting with raw umber and white is that when you work down into the shadows, you have more raw umber in the mix, which means that you end up with a little bit more chroma. So if you're working with chroma as an intensity of color, so it's closer to neutral in the lights, cooler you could say, and with more chroma or intensity of color because there's more raw umber in the mix in the shadows. And that actually mirrors the way that light works, indoor light works. This kind of lighting anyway. So this photo was shot in natural light in my studio next to the window, my still life stand next to the window. This is a value 8, that's a value 7. I'm going to mix a value 6 now, for which I need some more white. I hate this white, Old Holland lead white. I mean, the paint itself is nice enough. It's okay. But because it's a tin like this, by the time you get to the bottom, you end up with loads of dried paint around the edge. Maybe there's a way that you're supposed to look after this paint that I'm missing. But you know, this paint cost me 100 quid, this little jar of paint. Lead white is really expensive these days. And there's some I will never get to that's stuck to the sides. I want to go back to my Rublev lead white. I have got some, but you know, I'm not throwing away like a large quantity of quality lead white paint. No way. Just because it's difficult to use, can't be doing that. What did we want here? Value 6. I am going to add a little bit more chroma here and there to some of these near neutrals as I paint with them. But for the background, I'm just going to do raw umber and white. So the key to managing this challenge and managing to do this in as few strokes as possible is going to be first simplifying those shapes down, which we've already started, that we've done the main part of, and then mixing the correct value. Oh, and also, of course, using nice big fat brushes so that, in fact, let's go bigger. I mean, the challenge is really about the teapot. I don't mind if I use a few too many strokes on the background, but you know, let's see what happens. Obviously, that's going to look darker as it goes down. So when we come to the teapot itself, I'm going to put, the paint now is I'm kind of scrubbing it on. When I come to the teapot itself, I'm going to attempt to put on strong, thick strokes of paint. And see how much I can do just with like a single stroke. Lots of things will affect how successful those strokes are, like the consistency of the paint. So a lot will depend on, you know, the particular paint that you're using will make a difference. Trying to paint around these shapes that are basically almost the same value already is itself a bit of a challenge. I probably should have drawn out the dark shapes darker and it would have made it easier to see where they are. So this brush here is a Rosemary's Ivory. Long flat, size 10. I like it. I like these brushes. If you have like a fairly large area that you want to cover reasonably quickly like this, they work really well. So a good painter to look at for the kind of things that the kind of approach and conceptual way of thinking about painting that I'm talking about today is, I think Sargent is a really good example, who you know, would actually paint really slowly, wouldn't paint quickly at all. And I'm sure some of the accounts are a little exaggerated, most likely. I mean, people like to romanticize things, don't they? But, you know, apparently he would stand at the back of his studio and think for ages about what stroke he was going to put down next. Mix the perfect color. So presumably the palette was at the back of the studio as well. I don't know about that, though. Mix it on exactly the color that he wanted. Walk over to the painting and put it down. A single stroke, right? And then walk back and decide if the stroke was right or not. Very frequently, apparently, wipe it out and try again. I'm not planning to do all of that today. Don't worry. Slightly lighter over here. I mean, all of these colors, they look darker than they really are because they are against this very, oh, have I done that the wrong way around? No. Yes. This very white panel. So until the panel is covered, it's really hard to see, to judge at least the actual values of those colors, right? Slightly lighter here than there. By the time we get over to the other side, it's a fair bit darker, like over here is a fair bit darker. And then we'll have a bit of the other value 7 in between to kind of join them together. Kids are back. Okay, so obviously I'm drastically simplifying. I don't want to put any detail in here that I don't need. The cast shadow, like a value 3. Raw umber. You'll see what I mean about when I put this cast shadow in, about there being a little bit more color in the shadows when you do a raw umber and white painting. Probably about right. Oh, it's the phone. I ain't answering my phone while I'm live. Let's get a different brush up for this. One that's about the right size for the stroke I want to make. It's going to come back from here over to the left. Michelle says, I'm always impressed that Sargent painted in a 3-piece tweed suit. I think a lot of painters did around then, didn't they? Because they were mostly blokes, because, you know, you had to be really, really committed to be a woman and paint in those days because it was made so difficult for them. Now, I know I've said this many times, but just think of all the incredible paintings that we've lost because, oops, men were too frightened of the competition. Come on, let's be honest. Softened at the back. So it's a cast shadow, so cast shadows get softer the further they move away from the object that's casting them. Bear in mind, we can't judge any of the values yet. Now, let's put in that big dark shape first. I think that's going to be fun, okay? Yeah, WH Dempsey says, I typically add a little OMS to the paint so I can keep it fluid. I wouldn't do that if I were you, because it won't cover so well. What I would be inclined to do instead is to, I mean, you could use something like Galkid if you want to make it more fluid, or just oil. You know, just oil. And if that's part of the reason why I paint on an oiled out surface like this. So what color do we want in that big shape in the middle? I know there are a load of different colors within it. Some of it is slightly darker, some of it is slightly lighter. So I'm going to allow myself to fiddle, but only right at the end, only once we've actually got all of those shapes in. So the goal is to paint, I'm going to be painting with big brushes. Try and put the right values in the right place, right? So it's a really low value. This is raw umber. I'm going to put in a little bit of ivory black. I would give it a little bit of transparent red oxide, give it a little bit of chroma. Unnecessary though. I mean, you could paint this whole thing all just with raw umber and white. I actually had a period when I was learning values, before I discovered Munsell actually, I spent a lot of time painting only with raw umber and white. And it's a really good kind of all-purpose, drastically restricted palette to do value studies with, because as I say, you get that. I think back then I was using titanium white, so the lights would be even cooler and the shadows would be have this kind of appearance of having like a bit more chroma to them. So what size brush is this? It's a 6. Let's try and describe this shape. So 2 strokes to make that shape. I'm not going to count them all the way through. That would be a bit pedantic, right? But I just want to give you an idea of like how I'm going to put the paint down, right? I'm more bothered about restricting the number of strokes I use because it's going to help me make each one count. So all of those little details you can see, you've got to ignore them. And you have to try and make sure that each stroke that you put down is in the right place. Notice that I'm not at the moment, like I've still got the outline of where the teapot goes, but I'm not thinking, no, I'll paint the handle, no, I'll paint this bit, no, I'll paint that bit. I'm looking for shapes. It's the only way I'm going to have any chance to meet this challenge. So I'm just looking for everything that's really dark. And trying to get it in a single stroke. As I say, I am allowed to add details, but not yet. So the challenge is to create the impression of silver, the feeling of the reflections, with as few strokes as possible. And by the way, the inspiration for this challenge, for this week's challenge, came from a really wonderful painter called Ewan McClure. I'll put his name in the chat. Elizabeth says, my drawing gets hidden in the background. Yeah, mine did a little bit too, so I've tried to go like up to the edges of it. Ewan, really good guy. Excellent painter. He teaches in Scotland, I think. Look him up. So look him up on Facebook if you still use Facebook, because he has recently been posting some paintings, and in a few of them he's had silver teapots that have been, they're just fantastic. He just does such a fantastic job of simplifying the shapes. And I thought, you know what, that would be a lovely challenge to give people for the Friday lives, to take a teapot like that and paint it as simply as possible. It's funny when that dark shape comes in, it's almost like it's already halfway there. There's no way I'm going to be able to paint this whole shadow shape with a single stroke and get it right. I wish I could. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. So I'll do the bottom bit first, and then let's see if we can go up and keep the shape right. It gets gradually thinner, so I've got to release the pressure as I go up. That could have been worse. Anything else really dark? Oh, we've got a bit of a dark shape here as well. Actually, so I'm trying to do each shape with a stroke. Middle value now. Jacqueline says, did you oil your panel, Paul? Did I miss that? Yes, you did. I did. I always oil the panel first. I mean, to do something like this on a dry panel would be a lot trickier because the paint just wouldn't flow, you know. So that cast shadow, remember how dark that looked when I put it down? It was like, oh, that looks wrong. You've got to get all the values in, you know, that you've got to have the full range of your values in before you can judge anything. It's much easier to judge it now, isn't it? Middle values. I think I might allow myself like 4 values overall. So that's 1 gone down. Mostly because I'm looking at this big shape and I think I really need 2 for that. Around here it's like a value 7. And by the time you get around to this side over here, it's down to about a value 4. And there's a little bit more chroma over here as well. So I'm going to mix a value 7, raw umber and white. Yeah, I mean, when you think about those female painters like Rosa Bonheur and people like that, even like later painters, Mary Cassatt, people like that, they had such a battle just to be allowed to paint at all, you know. And we complain that painting is hard now. And they were never accepted in their day, and it still happens now. As taken as seriously as male artists, you know. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that actually a lot of the best artists that I know of are female. So I've got raw umber and white to a value 7, and I've got transparent red oxide to a value 7. Because I want a little bit more chroma in this side, I'm just going to add a little bit of that transparent red oxide, just enough, not much, just enough until I can see it's just noticeably got a little bit more colour to it, a little bit more chroma. Get a fresh brush. I'm going to go through quite a few brushes today because I need to get a fresh brush out every time I change the colour. Jacqueline says, I think I'd like to paint this way 3 colours only. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant, it's a brilliant exercise to do. You know, to paint form with only 3 colours, light, half tone and shadow, you can do it. No comments, please, about where these are going yet or the values. You cannot judge it at this point. You can't. All I can say is if you're painting along, and you see something differently, then paint it the way you see it. Jan, I love those rubber spatulas. They're fantastic fun. Right, let's get this lighter value in over here, this side. I'm going to leave a space here for that darker value. So it goes about there. I'm going to bring it round to about here. 1, 2, can I get it in 3? Squidge it over 3. Actually, same value is the light shape on the spout here. I think it's going to take me 3 goes to get this in. 1, 2. Go on. 3. It's starting to come. This is so much fun. It's a really good challenge, actually, to set yourself. So the other side over here, we want like a value 4, I said, didn't I? Lower chroma, so we'll just go raw umber and white. So as I was saying in the beginning, there is a serious side to what I'm doing here. It's not just to make painting hard, you know, because actually if you can get this approach right, it makes painting easier. If you can make something live with a very small amount of strokes, it will teach you simplification. Andrew Loomis talks a lot about this in his book, Creative Illustrations, a really good book, about how simplifying the main planes makes something appear stronger, you know. But not only that, it teaches you the basic fundamental skill of painting, of oil painting, which is to simplify the big shapes, nail those shapes and values. So this is like a value 4. I'm going to do this in all this shape here. I know there's a lot of variation in this shape, but I'm going to do it all 1. Can I do it in 2 strokes? Almost. Actually, I think this lighter value needs to come further around, so I'm going to bring it back in. Value 5. For most of my middle values, I'm going to be like a value 5, raw umber and white. So I'm just bringing some raw umber into what I had as my value 6 till I get to a 5. So I love painting with this value scale because then it really helps you keep a good handle on your values and where they are. So important. Do I paint like this normally? No, I don't. I'll give you an example of, actually this is from a workshop I'm teaching at the moment, is a piece, this is probably more the direction that I'm going in at the moment, with lots of texture and, you know. But this is an exercise, you know, and it's a really good one to teach you some useful stuff about painting. So where's this value 5 going to go? I think I'm going to bring it up all of this area, and I'm going to bring it up a little way into the dark here. All the way around the top. It's going to come down and get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and then join up with that bit there. Where else? Up here, probably, I think. It's starting to come. This is such a fun challenge. I'm really glad I did this one today. I'm going to do this because there's black and white here. I'm going to average it and do it as a middle value. Didn't really get that one. Didn't have enough paint on. That's the other thing about painting this way, is you have to load the brush. It forces you to load the brush because you have to try and do it in a single stroke. So if you don't have enough paint on there, you're screwed. To put on too fine a point on it. You can't do that single stroke to make that shape because you don't have enough paint on the brush. I think that value is going to go back here as well. So I'm doing a lot of like pressing the brush down to get a wider mark and then gradually releasing the pressure to try and get the mark to go down a bit thinner. I need a darker, I've got to put this in. It's bothering me, so I've got to put it in. Dark value down here, which comes up and then gradually disappears into that value there. So doing strokes like this is what I was talking about. You've got to be slow for them to be accurate. Darker middle value up here. That may be too light actually there. Maybe should have gone with my value 4 there. This is my value 3. I want these to join up. And it's almost kind of like a meditation in a way. Trying to get these colors to go in. In the right place. What needs to go here? Oh, the darker value, right, the 5 here. Oh. And this is not all highlight, it's like, let's stick in the value 8 up there. Find another hog of about the same size. So no details yet, no edges have been harmed in the making of this painting so far. Light value, leaving a gap for the dark one that goes in there, comes up into that value there and out. And that dark value is not the very darkest. I'll use a 3, this value that comes up the teapot spout over to the side, and then it describes this edge of the teapot spout. Oh, I cacked that up a bit. I'm going to have to go into it with my background. What did I have on the background there? Oh, 7. And I've destroyed it and used it for something else. Never mind, this should be close enough. No, it's too light. So if you cack something up like I just did then, you can cut back into it with the background to sort it out. And this is too big. So that dark value went in too low. Ha! Caught out. I'm going to have to do a correction. I've got this in the wrong place. Has to go closer, I think, and make that smaller. Now I'm losing it. I've fudged a bit because I wasn't getting it right. It is pretty tricky, this, to be fair. Thank you, Laura. Name that book and author again, please, Paul. I will do better than that. Louise, I will put it in the comments. It is Andrew Loomis. He's a golden age American illustrator, and the book is, he wrote a bunch of books, they're all good. But this is his best, I think. Creative illustration. Yeah, Jacqueline, at that about women artists, it's just common sense. It's like a whole half of the population, oftentimes brightest and most talented, and completely barred from whole areas of endeavour. What was that woman who? I mean, the women scientists had it even worse. I wish I could remember her name, but I can't remember it. Basically discovered more about the nature of the universe and the basic atoms that it's made up of than Einstein did. Totally ignored. I can't even remember her name, and I tried to commit it very hard to memory. Why can't I remember her name? Because no one talks about her. Okay, I'm into smaller shapes now. Need a little bit of refinement here and there. I think it's starting to come. I think when we're approaching an impression of, so moving in to the mid values, starting to get an impression of it coming. Higher value around the highlight. So I'm gradually approaching the highlight and leaving that white, so I make sure that it's the highest value in the whole thing. Didn't manage to get that down. Do you know why I didn't? Because even though I don't have enough paint left on my palette, I tried to force it instead of mixing more. I do it too. I'm always telling people off this. Mix more colour. Don't try and paint something if you don't have enough paint mixed. Mix more paint. Use more paint. And I just did it myself. Hoist by my own petard. Didn't get a nice stroke. Approaching the highlight. Oh, this value is too high. Let's use the 5 in here. I'm going to lose the shape inevitably with this brush, but we'll try and keep it something like... So you can also vary the value that you put down with the pressure that you use in the brush. This has definitely got too light now. This should still be dark. This is so much fun. This is in the wrong place. See this? I left out this little area here for a highlight, but I put it in the wrong place because it's supposed to line up with this highlight here. So it comes down and then it's another reflection of the same window. So it should be more like there. See, oh, I'm having to fudge a couple of bits now. Oh. Yeah. I'll put some white in, just flat white for the highlights as well. Mostly because, I mean, yes, they're already the value they need to be, but actually having the paint in there, let's not be using that horrible old brush though. Actually having the paint in there is going to help them, help me soften the edges. So this is another flat, this is another Rosemary's Ivory long flat. In you go, highlight. You know what, let's do this bit here by painting it all in, the middle value. Use 3 brush strokes there when I should have used 1, and then putting in the highlights. There's 1 at the bottom. It's going to take 2 strokes to do that because I'm not going to paint in the direction of the highlight. I'm going to use the shape of the brush to make it. Another one here. And then I can kind of create the impression of the rings of detail on that part of the base without actually painting them. Not enough white. I almost did the same thing again. Try and put a white highlight in without having thick enough paint. That would not have worked. I'm so glad I'm almost at the end of this paint, this horrible. I'm never buying this again. Old Holland. I mean, their paint is good, you know, as a rule. It's good paint. And the paint in here is fine. Maybe what I should have done is taken it all out right at the beginning. Look at this. That's what I like about lead white. It hangs off the end of the brush, and then I can use that to make a highlight if I'm careful. That can run all the way down there. Ooh, and across a little bit. We've got another little one. I need a smaller brush too to get that in. Dark value. With a highlight on it. Where else do we want little highlights? I'm doing it with a big fat brush to show you that you don't need to use a fine brush to do it. There's one here. This is lead white, like they call it ropes. A nice one on the end of the spout. And there's a few more kind of little highlights here and there. I'm going to put them in because I think they help the form. And obviously I haven't done any of these little bobbles around here. I'm not going to bother with that. Oh, I've just realised a bit that I've missed, though. I need a middle value to finish this shape here. Ooh. Not too shabby. Shall I do edge handling or shall I leave it as it is? Jocelyn Burnell. Possibly, I'm not sure though. If it was her. There's been a lot of really brilliant female scientists. No. You can. Michelle says, should we club together to get pull some more new paint? Anyone who wants to send me some lead white, especially if it's a Rublev #1, gratefully received. All donations of lead white. It's hard to get hold of over here. I can still get it though. Dark value just around up here. Still trying to do everything like where I can with a single stroke. I know everybody wants to see this bit. I want to see it as well, to be fair. The little, what do they call it? Is Ginny here? Ginny knows what these are called. The thumb rest or something. You know we've got to do this with no more than 2 strokes of one colour each. A dark stroke. And a highlight. So the way you do this is you get the lead white so it's hanging off the end of the brush and then you just lay the tail of it down. Works really, really nicely. I won't be able to get enough to do one all the way down here, down the handle. But nonetheless, I'll go as far as I can. Who wants edge handling? Shall I do edge handling? Or shall I leave it like this? What do you think? Is it a good enough demonstration of what I wanted to show you as it is? Or should I do a little bit of edge handling? Because you know what difference that can make. But I kind of like, it's got a kind of an honesty to it at the moment about the way all of those strokes have been put down. A kind of a simplicity to it. My handle is totally the wrong shape. There I was going on about how to make sure your handles are the right shape, and mine's horrendous. No. Try and fudge it and cut a bit of the back off where it's wrong. It doesn't matter as long as no one actually sees the reference photo, which, you know, probably putting it out on the internet was a bad move. You would never know. You'd never know. But also, I mean, you know, I think that the lesson that I'm trying to get across here is how far I've conceptualized the reference photo. That was the wrong value, actually. Use a second stroke to lift some off. In that you know, the background has been abstracted really to a large degree until it's not really, it doesn't bear any relation to the photo at all. I'm not trying to make a background that works. I'm just trying to paint this. Trying to get these shapes right and the values right, and hopefully it's enough to show the point that I wanted to get across today, which is that if you get your values right and if you simplify and you get your shapes in the right place, painting really complicated stuff need not be as difficult as you think. Now, there is no reason why you couldn't take something like this as an underpainting, leave it dry, and then paint all of the little details in later. The advantage of approaching it this way is that you can nail the values right at the beginning. So you can make something that works well right at the start. And then sort it out later. You can, you know, and I know it's very tempting to think, well, you know, I just need to get this bit of the thing to look right. I need to get that bit looking right, and then it will hold together. If it's not working, it's not because you haven't added detail. It's not because there's not enough detail. It's because you haven't got the big picture. So JK says, I'm constantly amazed at Paul's transformation from messy to masterful. That transformation that you're talking about there, it happens by itself. So you saw how I built this up really carefully, right? So this is just a case of getting the right values in the right place. That's all it is. I mean, yes, there's a certain amount of practice with the brush to be able to do that. I spent the way I practiced my brush technique, what I usually call what I call brush calligraphy when I'm doing crit sessions, is I got a Chinese brush and ink, and I practiced with that quite a lot, and it really, really helped. It really, really helped me kind of nail this approach to using a brush very economically. I practiced Chinese calligraphy for a while. I had no idea what letters I was writing. I never learned the language. But practicing the calligraphy helped my brush control. Because in order to get things working well with something like, you know, very washy, thin ink and a very soft brush and make an exact mark, it's so much more difficult than this, that when you come back to do something like this, it's like, oh, this is quite easy in comparison. It's not anything like as hard as doing that stuff. And, you know, oil paint is like, you can move the brush around slowly and you still get a good mark, you know. Putting in little refinements here and there, I think the details, the values are slightly out. Votes for edges. That's really good to hear. Jacqueline says, I'm painting along with you, but pairs instead of reflections. You've opened up my stop place. I'm really, really happy to see that. So hopefully you agree. This is a reasonable rendition with very, very simple strokes of of the cup. How long did it take me? A little over an hour. We made it. Yeah. Yes, it's all hard-edged at the moment. It's all very brushy, but you can paint like this and it can work, you know, as long as the values are good. If anything, I think it works better with something reflective like this because it does tend to have like harder edges here and there. Anthony says, will British Customs allow lead white sent privately from the US? Probably not, to be fair. I shouldn't say this live on the internet, absolutely, but a good friend did send me from the US and she disguised it as titanium. I knew as soon as I picked up the tube because it was too heavy to be titanium. So Jacqueline says, if I can do this, I'd be proud. Honestly, Jacqueline, it is just practice. It's just practice. I've used the ChromaMagic app, the incredibly wonderful ChromaMagic app, to help me nail those values, and I've drastically simplified it. Extreme simplification, you know. Let's do a little bit of edge handling. What harm can it do? He says confidently while he's about to destroy his painting. I mean, this is just a demo, right? If I was going to start doing some edge softening here, like this edge, I would leave that hard, but I would soften this transition. So this is a soft synthetic. It's dry. There's no paint on it, right? So I would like to blend across here, this value into that one. So this area is a bit more subtly blended around here. Just doing a little bit of edge handling here and there can make a huge difference. Like, You know, that's one edge, right? Immediately it starts to sing. This area suddenly feels smooth and beautiful and lustrous. One edge, but I've got a soft edge against a hard edge. Let's give the highlights a little bit of a glow, dragging the highlight paint out into the darker values around it just a little way, helps to give it a little bit of a shimmer. I'm going to soften this transition across here. Third area of softening. I'm just going to do the minimum basically, right? Already it looks different, isn't it? I'm going to drag a little bit of darker but not too dark value around here where there's a little bit of detail. Oh, come on, not enough paint. Don't fall into that trap, Paul. And then we're going to leave the top edge of that stroke hard, but I'm going to soften the left and the bottom. And now that I'm allowing myself to fiddle, I'm going to sort out my handle a little bit. What value did I have here in the background? 7. It's not the same value as the photo. It doesn't matter, you know, that it's not the same value. As long as the value relationships on the object itself are right, which I flatter myself that they are, you know, reasonably good, it's going to work. Let's, little bubbles. Just putting on little dead highlights, not doing anything else. Show a little bit of texture around there. What else? You know what? I'm not sure it needs a lot more, really. The highlights on the shadow side here, they are there, but they're a lower value than the ones on the other side. Little details here and there that kind of start bringing it to life. And me personally, you know, for a painting like this, I would be wanting to have some life in the background. Like, I've got to be really careful now because, you know, there's a really good chance that I can screw up the painting if I work it into the background too much. But I would like to have a little bit more variation. Just a little bit here and there. But it doesn't need much. And I like my backgrounds really brushy and loose. Maybe a slightly lighter value just around this area here. Help that bit sing out a little bit. There we go. I'm going to leave it there. I don't think it needs, it definitely doesn't need any more to show you like what I wanted to show you. That teapot is really complicated. The actual object itself, I mean, here it is. There's so much detail in it. You know, you could spend months painting it, or you could spend an hour. And this is actually harder to do. And this is why I'm such a fan of the ChromaMagic app and this value scale. But they are just tools. So you have to be able to simplify those big shapes. You have to keep yourself from getting lost in all the tiny little details. There are no window panes in my highlight, although they're quite obviously there on the on the reference photo, if you can make something like this, you can paint anything. It's just a case of getting the values right. Okay. This is the basic. Yes, it's an extreme form of it, but this is basically what I teach all the time. Is anyone who learns with me will back me up on this, he hopes. Simplification, brushwork, and accuracy of value and color. The great thing about the ChromaMagic app is it helps you avoid a lot of the mistakes that you would make in value with your untrained eye. Values are very hard because our perception systems are not designed for painting. They're just not. It makes it really hard. This allows you to take the values that you see in ChromaMagic and actually put them straight onto your palette, and from your palette onto your painting. This is the link between what you see in the app and nailing the values on the painting. And the most important part of painting is values. With those two tools, you will be able to go a really, really long way. If you want to get involved at a deeper level in this stuff, if you want the reference photos and you want the materials list to come along to the critique sessions, live critique sessions, and be a part of the community, which is the most lovely and awesome community of painters I've come across anywhere. Obviously, I'm bound to say that, but it's, it really is. I'm not making it up. I've been very lucky to attract a lot of very lovely, helpful and supportive people. If all of that sounds good to you, as well as a bunch of courses that teach you the basics and some recordings of ex-workshops, what used to be live workshops that allow you to implement those skills, that's where you can find out at the school. It's $33 a month. I'm actually going to run a trial. I'm going to start doing $1 trials for the first month. I was going to do it today actually, but I forgot. So don't sign up yet. Just put the link in there. Copy the link and make a note of it, and or just subscribe to my email list. I should put that out there as well, shouldn't I? I should give you a link to that as well. My email list. Because that's useful even if you don't want to join the school, because if you want to know when these demos are going to happen, I'm just putting all these things in the live chat. You can subscribe to the email list, and I send out an email like a little bit before when I'm about to go live. Sorry, what was that about the spout, Margaret? I missed your earlier comments, see if I can find it. Love the painting, but the bottom of the handle. This makes me laugh, like when people always, talk about missing the point. And obviously there are some parts of the painting that aren't finished, right? But the point that I'm trying to show you is that in order to create the impression of the object, you don't need all of those details. I know you would want to get that handle perfect. I know you would want to put all of that in. I get it. I would like to too. The point of this demonstration, though, is can you create the impression of silver without doing all of that detailed stuff? And hopefully I've proved that the answer is yes. Is it easy? No. No, it's really not. It takes practice, but you can absolutely do it. You can absolutely get this. And I promise you, if you can, you get a really strong foundation like this in the painting, then you can do the little details to your heart's content because you've got the big picture nailed. That's the important thing, okay? Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Friday is homemade pizza day, and it's pizza time for me. I'm going to make a pizza for me and my youngest boy, Jasper. And we're going to eat that and chat. It's been lovely to see you. I'll see you all again next week, if not before. Bye for now.